Welcome, everybody, to another edition of UFO Man Live. My name is Tim, or UFO Man, and to my side is my friend and my co-host, Tommy Highway. Tommy?
Hey, folks, I'm Tommy Highway. Want to thank everybody for coming out as always, especially with our new time. Really appreciate that. We've gotten some very positive responses from that so far. We really appreciate that. Again, want to welcome everybody. We have a fantastic show for you this evening. We got several different subjects we're going to cover this evening. But one of the subjects that we're going to cover, well, I think I'd like to go ahead and start with just a story. I once worked with a person. I wouldn't really call him a friend, but he was a coworker. And one of his previous jobs was I don't exactly remember the details, but he was on a ship in the ocean. If you've ever seen that movie Virus with Jamie Lee Curtis, that's the ship that's one of the ships that he was on, actually. In fact, he had they sunk it recently, or a few years ago, but he actually had a photo of that on his wall. But I don't exactly remember what he did, but one of the ships that he was on, they were towing this cable. It wasn't really a cable. It was more of a tube. And again, I don't remember what it was supposed to do, but I do remember that he said that it was actually full of high-grade kerosene. And the thing was about 100 feet long, apparently. So they would actually take this thing and they tow it around the ocean, and it would do whatever it is that it does. Until one night, he said, it snagged something. And it snagged something so hard. And mind you, folks, this is in the middle of the ocean. It snagged something so hard that it ripped this array, or whatever the heck it was, off the ship, injured a couple people quite badly. And I mean, it was millions of dollars worth of hardware just went to the bottom of the ocean. Now, the interesting thing about this is they never found out what it was. They even made a maritime report about it because there were injuries and all of that business. You know, there's a reporting system like you would think. And they went through all of that, and they never heard another word about it. Very interesting. So, yeah, this probably took place about 15 years ago or so, something like that. So again, it was just one of those anomalies, and they're scratching their heads and they never figured it out. So let's go ahead and fast forward to just very recently, just a few days ago, actually. A U.S. Navy nuclear-powered submarine that was damaged in a collision with an unknown underwater object in the South China Sea last weekend has arrived in port at Guam, the Navy said on Friday. No further details about the circumstances of the collision or the extent of the damage to the USS Connecticut were available, but China's foreign ministry expressed serious concern about what happened. This is a quote. As the party involved, the U.S. should clarify in detail the situation of the accident, including the location, the intention of the sailing, details of the accident, such as what exactly it collided with, whether it caused a nuclear leak, and whether it damaged the local marine environment. Foreign Ministry spokesman Zhao Lihan, I believe, told reporters Friday. So again, folks, this is hot off the presses. When it disclosed the October 2nd accident on Thursday, U.S. Pacific Fleet said that there had been no damage to the sub's nuclear propulsion system and that it had not yet determined what underwater object had been struck. It did not say where the collision happened, but other officials said it was in the South China Sea. Now, China claims total sovereignty over the South China Sea, a stance that is not accepted by the United States and its allies. China protests the presence of the U.S. Navy in the area. The South China Sea is among many points of growing contention between Washington and Beijing, including the status of Taiwan, the island that China claims as its own. The U.S. sub's underwater collision in the South China Sea was unusual, and the Navy said it is under investigation. About 11 crew members sustained injuries that the Navy said ranged from moderate to minor, including scrapes and bruises. The Connecticut, based in Bremerton, Washington, is one of 3 Seawolf-class attack submarines in the Navy fleet. Those subs were designed during the Cold War with the Navy of the former Soviet Union in mind, to improve the U.S.'s ability to attack submarines and surface ships. Each is operated with a crew of about 140. So what we're saying here, folks, is that, okay, well, there's a couple of problems that we have here. Anytime, how can I put this? The Chinese are drama queens, okay? If we had so much as dinged the door of a piece of their equipment, you better believe that they'd have photographs and video, and they'd have bandaged up people, and it'd be a great big spectacle. You know, very similar to the incident that happened in the late 90s when those two planes collided. Okay. They're known for doing this. They're going to over dramatize this. But the funny thing is, they don't have anything to take photos of. I mean, right. They're not claiming that one of their vessels, one of their underwater submerged vessels was struck. They're not even claiming that one of their surface vessels, you know, be it military or even, you know, civilian, merchant or whatever, they're not even claiming anything like that was struck. What they're saying is, okay, United States, what the hell did you guys hit out there? Because it wasn't us. Tim, what are your thoughts on this?
Right. The fact that they're not coming out and saying what it is, and the fact that the speed of the object that hit the submarine has been classified kind of lends credence to the idea that it could be something of unknown origin. And what I'm insinuating is, could it have been hit by a USO? If it was hit by a USO, it'd be traveling at speeds far exceeding 400 knots. And that could be the reason why they're classifying the speed, because if they let out the speed, the actual speed of the object that hit the submarine and actually shifted the path of the submarine from the direction it was going enough to cause damage to the nose cone of the submarine, that tells me it was going incredibly fast. And I was talking to somebody earlier today. Somebody suggested, well, maybe it was a whale. Well, it couldn't be a whale, because if a whale hit a submarine that hard head on, the whale would be dead and it would be floating on the ocean.
They'd barely feel it if they felt it at all.
You think the whale wouldn't feel it?
Probably not. You have to understand, these things are built for tough. They really are. I mean, you're talking about crushing classified depths, crushing underneath the water. I mean, we don't even know how deep they go. That's how deep they go.
The submarine wouldn't have had damage. You're right.
No, I wouldn't think so. I mean, you know, it'd be like hitting a bug in the, on your windshield or something. I don't think that's it. I don't think it was anything biological. I think and I agree with you, Tim. I think they hit something underwater that Beijing didn't know was there, and it's in the South China Sea. It wasn't their equipment. I think you're right, Tim. I think they probably collided with a USO. There's just too much mystery surrounding this. And again, I'm going to have to go with the fact that the Chinese aren't running around with poster-sized photos of the damage that we caused to one of their pieces of property. Because I guarantee you they would do that. I'd bet everything I own on it twice. I really would. Right.
The other thing I was going to say about it was you got to consider the armored outer hull of a nuclear attack sub. Mm-hmm. It is incredibly thick. So it's not going to be penetrated by anything that hits it or dings off of it very easily. And so whatever hit it had to be traveling at extreme speeds. And as Tommy and I have talked about in the past, I think most nuclear subs can only travel upwards of 400 knots. So anything over 400 knots has to be something of unknown origin. Although I do know they're working on underwater hypersonic drones, but I don't think they're operating them in the South China Sea at this point.
Tim, I need to correct you on that. It's actually 16 to 24 knots. 400 knots is moving. That's we don't have anything.
16 to 24 knots. Yeah. I stand corrected. I thought it was 400 knots. Okay. If you realize the difference between 16 to 24 knots to 1,000 knots, say, and sometimes the Russians have been tracking what they call ghost submarines under the water that have been traveling anywhere from 1,000 to 2,500 knots. Mm-hmm. So if that's the case, consider the amount of force it would have when it would hit that submarine. It lifted it. It moved the nose cone of the attack sub from the direction it was going. It actually shifted it over from what I've read. Mm-hmm. So if it shifted it over, it had to be something powerful and large and something moving fast.
And completely unexpected. And Tim and I were talking about this earlier this morning, and Tim made a great point. Like he said, these sonar operators and all of the other sensors that these top of the line, and the Seawolf is the best we got. Okay, it's number one. in terms of its equipment, its age, everything. It's like the newest class we have now. And like Tim was saying, these things these things are moving up way faster than we can actually than the submarine moves itself. Okay, and if this thing did, if in fact impact this, all right, you would think that well, first of all, I'd be very interested to know if it left any kind of residue on the hull, things of that nature. I mean, because clearly it was very unexpected. But my point being is that these sonar operators are so good at what they do. I mean, these guys are absolutely trained to be able to decide whether they're hearing something that's biological in nature, or whether they're hearing, an adversary's technology, or it's another submarine or whatever. These guys are very good at what they do. And these subs have the top of the line equipment. Okay. Now, for them to have a collision of any kind is so super rare. I mean, it's happened before, but it's very, very rare. And, well, didn't the Russians have a weird collision years ago? They had a weird collision.
Yep, and they had no idea what hit them either. And I think it even almost sunk that sub.
Yeah, yeah.
We had to go down there and rescue them.
Well, I don't think that. No, I think this one made it back, but it was the nose cone of it was heavily damaged. They were blaming the United States that you ran into us, and the United States is like, well, that's all well and fine, but we don't seem to have any damaged submarines. Okay, so if we don't have any damage and you got all that damage, clearly there would have been damage on both craft. So in theory, the Russians, who have reported this phenomenon before underwater, as you were saying earlier, right, they very well may have had their own collision as well.
There was a collision though, where with a Russian sub where it went down, and we had to send deep sea submersibles down to rescue them, and they still don't know what caused the sub to go down.
It's just, I mean, this has happened over and over. Maritime tales are very common in ufology. I mean, you can go back to Christopher Columbus, and you look at Christopher Columbus's logs, and he's talking about a red light on the horizon in the dead of night. Now, it's Christopher Columbus, so chances are he wasn't looking at a pleasure yacht. He probably wasn't looking at an aircraft carrier. Whatever it was, whatever he was seeing, it was enough for him to add it to his logbook. Okay. So there must have been something there of some substance, or, he had a reason to do it. I'll put it that way. What are your thoughts on that, Tim?
Well, I think that what our conclusions are on this story is, since we don't really have all the evidence, I mean, we don't know the extent of the damage to the Seawolf class USS Connecticut yet, because it's in port and it's being looked at this time. But when we do find out that evidence, we'll come back with a more of a definitive theory. But I would say that from all the evidence we have right now, it got hit by a USO.
Yeah, something unexpected, something that wasn't supposed to be there, and something apparently that China did not know anything about. I mean, for the Chinese government to come out and make a statement like they're making, they're, I think, more concerned about what it was than they are anything else. And they are the incursion into, from one of our submarines into their territorial waters.
Right.
But yeah,
they don't want us to have it either.
No, absolutely not. But I mean, that's the thing. Now, are they ever going to show us the extent of damage to this nuclear submarine? That's the question. And even if we do see a photo, how do we know that that's actually the damage?
Right, exactly.
At this point, let's be honest, Uncle Sam isn't exactly trustworthy when it comes to national security secrets and things of that nature. I mean, he'll say one thing and do another. But I just thought it was interesting. I thought it's something that we definitely should cover because Tim and I we're not trying to be conspiracy theory nuts here. We're not trying to be, the National Enquirer here. We're not talking about, the Loch Ness Monster. This just seems like this has actually happened more than once to more than one military, and we have another incident where the object that was struck is unknown. Now, how can that be? I mean, I just don't understand.
And the sonar people on board actually tracked the object moving beyond and past the submarine after it was hit. So it kept going, whatever it was. So what it must not have sustained much damage to keep on moving.
Well, I'll tell you, if it can move, 1,000 knots underwater, it's probably protected by some kind of shielding or whatever, because, friction, terrestrial physics prevent you from being able to travel at that speed through water unless you're encased in something that pushes the water away or whatever. I don't know.
Right. Although there are subs and there are torpedo systems that actually create a bubble around themselves to move quicker through water.
Yeah.
So maybe that's what's happening, but on a far greater scale.
The Russians have a torpedo, and I remember hearing about this. This has probably been 15, 20 years ago. But the Russians have developed a torpedo that, you're right, it encases the torpedo inside of basically an air bubble and gives it a lot more speed. And apparently the United States government broke their back trying to figure out this technology and eventually gave up on it. At least that's how the rumor mill goes. So that's true. But a torpedo is something that's maybe 12, 15 feet long, and it's very small, very cylindrical, and that it returns a much weaker sonar signal than something that's a lot bigger than that. But again, with these, here's what gets me about this incident. Okay, the Chinese incident or the China Sea incident is that these sonar operators, they're in there and they didn't hear this thing coming. I mean, how did they miss that? How'd they miss something that it must have been moving so fast that it happened before they could react to it, or it made no noise at all and it had no kind of sonar return or anything like that on it. So who knows?
Right. So it's still a mystery to this day, and until we know more, that's about all we can say.
That's right.
Right.
We'll keep you guys on the cutting edge of that as soon as we find out more. In the meantime, Tim, you think we should go ahead and roll our video review of the week?
Sure. Okay, this is over Cottage Grove, Minnesota. It was filmed with infrared camera. That's why the lights are pink. They're actually white and red. So when you take a look at them, that's the way that you should see them rather than pink. But this was filmed by GameVet02, a friend of ours that's in the chat a lot. And he says he sees these things all the time.
He's our second favorite trucker. Our first is my father.
There we go. He's a trucker ufologist.
Wish we had a million of them.
So you can see the red. GameVet02 told me that there were no FAA lights on these objects. Even though they're flashing, they don't have the green and red. It's just red, blue, and like a white.
Yep.
Well, Cottage Grove is about 85 miles northwest of me, where I live. And so that's close to home. All right, these are 5 UFOs over a tree line outside of Rochester, Minnesota, and that's only 40 miles from me. So I had to put this one up because it's local. As you can see, they are fluctuating in brightness. And they seem to hold their position. Don't know what they are. The one that's right above the tree in the middle will disappear momentarily. It'll disappear behind the tree. There it goes.
I mean, if they're drones, then they're sporting awfully bright lights. I mean, that to see them that clearly in this time of day, I mean, I don't see that. I mean, I just don't see a light that bright. Those are really bright lights, folks.
Right, exactly.
Someone said something interesting on a video I was watching the other day about drone hoaxes. And it's like, there's some pretty bright lights that you can get for drones and things like that, but you can only power them for so long because most of them are pretty good size and weigh a lot. So the drone's only going to stay there for a few minutes and aloft or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, this Mr. Catfish. Yeah, I think I agree with you on this. I don't think that's drones. I think there's something else going on there. I think it may be UFO.
Okay, here's an object that's rotating over La Plata, Argentina on 9/25/2021. Take a look at this. It looks like a silver object with maybe a dark center, but it is spinning. And it looks like it's going to go behind the building, but it does not. It goes back up into the sky. And it almost looks like it's rocking back and forth on the air.
Well, I think we can rule out balloon and all that business right off the bat.
Here it goes. It's going to go back up. Now I'm going to zoom in on this. But when I zoom in, it kind of blurs the image. I think it's the person who filmed its camera. But, you do the best you can. Here it is. You can see the rotation. And how it reflects light.
Give anything for a better camera on this one.
Yeah. I zoomed in to get it as close as I could. The only time you really see it is when it flashes light.
Is it rotating or is it just kind of going like this?
No, it's turning.
We definitely put this one on the definite maybe pal for sure because I don't know what that is.
Now watch this. It has a near miss with an airplane.
Damn. Wow. Huh. And it was there for a while too. It wasn't like this was there and gone. It's just hanging out.
Right. It's just
Very
hanging
interesting.
out. That's right. I tried to get a zoomed in image of it, but I could only get the dark shape. I couldn't get the light one. It should be done here shortly. But it is definitely there for a while.
Yeah.
Miss Tracy Joe Hill says, wait a minute. Has that UFO been drinking and driving? LOL. David Snyder says, playing chicken with that airplane. Mr. Catfish says, this one looks real too. Kelly Lewis says, look how it shimmers when the sun hits it. There it is when it's dark. Okay, here's a light or UFO over Hermosillo, Mexico on 9/30/2021. It starts near a light diode on a power line. It just appears, goes up, brightens, and takes off.
there's no way that's a drone. It's moving way too fast unless this footage is sped up or something. I mean, I don't.
Has not been sped up.
It just takes right off.
People think that it might be some type of electrical anomaly. Here's an odd UFO over Montreal, Canada, filmed back in August of 2019. And I happen to know for a fact that this is a legitimate footage.
Oh, look at that.
And this is one of those that would be in that category that Congress and the Department of National Intelligence could be looking at, that would make a lot of the congressional leaders not be able to wrap their head around the idea of reality of UFOs. I mean, look at that.
Yep. Very, very interesting. And it's like we've been hearing from all of our sources that the classified UAP report contains photographs, video evidence, and sonar tracks that would absolutely blow our minds. And again, we've heard the word disturbing. We've heard the word science fiction movie, things like that to describe these craft that are flying right there outside the wing of these F-18s, like flying a formation with them, crazy.
Right, exactly. And we actually have a video that confirms that later on in the evening. So stay tuned so you can hear that information.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's not a balloon. I don't know what that is, but that's wow.
See, at first when I saw this, I thought drone, but there's no rotor. So what is powering it?
I mean, you'd see there are drones that have internal rotors, but you usually see light through them. I mean, we're not seeing that on this one. That's great footage. That's fantastic.
Kind of looks like a giant sunflower head that's flying around.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we should be coming up shortly to the next UFO video clip. Reminds you of a flywheel, huh, Kelly? That's true. It does.
Yeah.
Mr. Catfish says strange. Look at the color differentiation. I mean, 1 minute it's brown, the next minute it's gold, green.
Wonder if that's the sunlight doing that.
Could be. Now I have two stills. They're coming up. There's the gold one. There's the dark one.
So basically, top and bottom is what we're looking at. Dark side, bottom, top side is got that gold color to it. Interesting.
Right. This one is two massive objects pass through the sun and out the other side in seconds.
Oh, God, I wanted to talk about this one. Look at this, folks. Now, something's clearly disturbing the sun. Now, could this be, a comet that's broken up or something like that? Oh, sure. Absolutely. I'm sure it probably happens all the time. The sun is, of course, a gigantic source of gravity. But they don't come out the other side. They do not do that, okay? I mean, there's not a space rock or asteroid or anything like that the sun isn't going to instantly vaporize if it even gets close enough to make contact with it, which is it ain't going to happen. That happens, and look at that. Boom, out the other side of the sun. Now, what does that, folks?
And in a matter of seconds. So that means these objects, somebody was saying to me in my comment section, have to be about 5 times larger than the size of the Earth.
Yeah.
Both of these objects are 5 times larger than the Earth. And they're traveling at such speeds to to go across the entire width of the sun in a matter of seconds?
Question is, I guess, why would you want to fly through the sun when you can just easily fly around it if you've got that kind of capability? But for whatever reason, when look at that, you see the disturbance made in the corona.
Yes.
I mean, you see it
right there. And it comes right out.
If this is real video, if this is not a hoax, I mean, I can't imagine what that could be.
This is real. It's legit.
Absolutely amazing. Where did you know where this came from?
Yeah, I got this from a Ken Rotberg on YouTube.
Wonder where he got it from. I guess some solar observatory.
He actually filmed it through a telescope.
Remember, what was it, a couple of years ago where the feds came in and closed up that solar observatory?
Yep.
Just like out of the blue one day, and never really had a good excuse for doing it. They mentioned there was mention of child pornography, but then that was it. Then you never heard that again. Don't know why they did that, and they've never clarified their actions that day, folks. But that's a fact. I mean, they came down on top of that place and shut it down for like some time.
Right, I remember that.
Matter of weeks, maybe months. I mean, it was down for a while.
Here's a UFO accidentally filmed by a drone over Brazil. Now it's moving kind of fast. It's moving towards you, toward the left side of the frame. And you can see it on the right side of the frame, a small white dot. Here it comes. I slowed it down there so you could see it more. It looks round with a hole in the center.
Yes, it does.
But if you remember what Bob Lazar said about anti-gravity vehicles, when they're operating, they create a hole in the center. So here it comes again, real fast. And there it is. What is
what that is? No idea what that is.
Yeah, I don't either. Okay. That's our UFO video review for 10/9/2021. Hope you enjoyed it. And our next segment tonight is on something very interesting. And I have a question for everyone. And I'm going to put it up so that you can see it. Do you want to be a Mars colonist? Tommy?
That's right, folks. This is pretty spectacular, pretty unique. We saw this and we thought, we'll just go ahead and kind of talk about it in case those of you that may be interested in colonizing Mars. We're going to go ahead and go with, have you looked at all of the trouble in the news lately and ever found yourself saying, I wish I could just get off this rock? You may just get your chance. NASA has announced that it is accepting applications for Mars colonists. How about that, folks? The space agency NASA is seriously searching for any highly motivated individuals to begin virtual reality simulations of what it would be like to live on Mars, with the hope of recruiting some of them for the real thing. NASA's bold new scheme begins with a high-tech 3D printed module dubbed Mars Dune Alpha for applicants to live in and adapt to habitats that they will encounter on the red planet. The project requires applicants to undertake 3 one-year surface simulations at NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston. So you have to be in this simulator for a year. Imagine that, okay? The habitat will simulate the challenges of a mission to Mars, including resource limitations, equipment failure, communication delays, and other environmental stressors. NASA shared in an official announcement about the initiative. Crew tasks may include simulated spacewalks, scientific research, use of virtual reality and robotic controls, and exchanging communications. The results will provide important scientific data to validate systems and developing solutions. Lead scientist Grace Douglas said researchers wanted to understand how humans would perform in Mars in more realistic situations. There are some heavy asterisks on the Mars application form. However, those wishing to participate in the simulations will need a master's degree in a STEM field such as engineering, mathematics, or biological, physical, or computer science, with 2 years of professional STEM experience or a minimum of 1,000 hours of piloting an aircraft. The program seeks healthy, motivated U.S. citizens or permanent residents who are non-smokers, aged 30 to 55 years old, and proficient in English for effective communication between the crew and mission control. Okay, wow. Where do you even start with something like this? Okay, first of all, let's go to the requirements for this program. I mean, you have to have a master's degree in either engineering, mathematics, or biological, physical, or computer science. So that leaves Tim and I out, and that's unfortunate. We don't like that. We feel like we've been discriminated against here. We should be the guys. I mean, we know we see something weird out the window. Who's going to figure that out faster, some astronaut or the UFO man and crew? I mean, come on.
I'll look at it this way. I offered to drive Tommy to the airport. I was ready to take him to Cape Canaveral and have him launched.
But his mistake was he tried to drink me under the table first, and he just couldn't quite get it done.
Oh, thanks. Anyway, so the Mars mission is pretty incredible. The fact that they want to have 600,000 people living in a fully functioning city in 100 years from now, that's pretty astronomical.
That's right. In fact, and they want to start this right away. It's probably not a bad idea to have a dual planet solution, for numerous different reasons. I mean, what if a comet were to strike or something like that? Something like what took out the dinosaurs that hit the Yucatan Peninsula. Well, what if that hits now? Well, that wipes out humanity. If you have a colony on Mars, I mean, at least you have a chance at, to reprocreate the species, I suppose, or whatever, repopulate or something. But It's probably not a bad idea. I just had this really weird feeling that it's going to take a hell of a lot longer than everybody's saying, including Elon Musk, to pull this off. Because you talk to Elon Musk and he's like, oh yeah, we're going to do it next weekend. It's like, I don't think that's realistic. And I also think that we're probably going to lose a bunch of people doing this. Me personally, I got to believe that they would create a spacecraft that's capable of housing, a number of humans and actually transporting them to, a distance to Mars. All right.
Right.
And make sure that bad boy works before you actually put people in. In other words, you do a dry run. You send the spacecraft there, all kinds of sensors on it, blah, 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 oxygen, yada, yada. And then you bring it back before you start putting people on it. And I really hope that that's how we're going to do this, because if we don't do it that way, we're definitely going to lose people.
We're going to lose people en route. Yeah.
Yeah, no question.
And Tommy, you can go first. I'm not doing it.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm not real big on those kind of environments. I happen to be a licensed scuba diver and have been for about 20 years. And I had to get dragged into that kicking and screaming. And I don't dig water. I'm probably pretty sure I wouldn't dig space. I mean, I'm a land creature. That's just, that's just how the highway rolls. It's not Tommy Skyway. It's Tommy Highway, damn it.
Yeah, I personally prefer Earth as well. So if I couldn't get back, I probably wouldn't go. But if I could get back in a relative short period of time within my lifetime, I might consider it, but I'm just not healthy enough to go at this point. Okay, on to the next segment. All U.S. military, the U.S. military is tracking UFOs using electromagnetic frequencies. Here we go. Narrated by Ross Colt Hart.
I've spoken to boffins who've told me that the US knew the frequencies that allowed them to track, detect, and anticipate these objects way back 30, 40 years ago. They've known about this and they've been tracking them with aircraft. And I've spoken to people, Bob Fish is one guy I name in my book, who's a former very, very highly cleared, top secret SCI cleared communications expert. who was working in the offices of a major defense contractor, and he was briefed about an incident where I think the first time it happened was in 1957. And it's actually, there's a paper I've discovered that actually talks about this, where the frequencies for the object and its movement are described and tracked by this craft, by the US Air Force craft. And then I've spoken more recently to people who've told me, I mean, Bob told me on a surveillance aircraft that was doing routine communications monitoring off Cuba during the Cold War. That guy briefed him about how the plane that he was in was diverted to a location off Florida, that's all he'd tell me, where UAPs were detected coming in and out of the water. That is, craft coming in and out of the water. Transmedium vehicles, UFOs. And as a result of me talking about that in other podcasts, I've had an array of scientists, technicians, military, multiple sources have contacted me telling me not only has the US done this, it's continuing to do it, and we're doing it in space now. We're also monitoring these objects in space. The allegation has been put to me by a source that I hugely respect but won't name, that the United States is exploring the possibility, and may indeed have already attempted to do so, of using these frequencies to bring down these objects. So essentially an offensive strategy against one of these objects, to deploy the electromagnetic frequencies of this object against it to try and bring it down. I sure as hell hope that's not happening, because the concern that was expressed to me was the risks involved in doing that. And multiple sources have told me that they're aware of an active operation right now, just off the Virginia coast of the United States of America, where since 2014, 2015, US Navy pilots have on a almost daily basis been seeing anomalous objects and filming them right next to their craft. And I'm told, and indeed Elizondo went on the record with me on this, some of these videos are extraordinary. They're incredibly clear, but they haven't been released to the public. Why? If the US is genuine when it asserts that this is a mystery, if it really is the truth, as the UAP Task Force report to Congress asserts, if it really is the truth that the US has just discovered this phenomenon, that, oh my God, these UFOs, oh hell, they're real. If that really is the case, then why the hell haven't they released everything they know? Because a lot of what I've been told by sources in government, in military, in defense aerospace is mind-blowing. And I reckon the public's got a right to know about it. And I've invited officials who've told me about it on the record, off the record. I've said to them, look, is there any good national security reason that you can think of as to why the public shouldn't at least be allowed to see these videos? Because frankly, I haven't seen these videos. I've had them described to me. From what I've heard, if they were released, it would be game over.
That's right.
Game over.
Mm-hmm. That's what we keep hearing too from our sources. Absolutely the same exact thing. I mean, like science fiction movie, right outside the aircraft, things like that. And there's another thing I thought was very interesting. There's a lot of pilots, old airline pilots that have retired over the years. And a lot of those guys are now coming forward with their stories, things that happened in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s and all of that, because it doesn't sound so crazy anymore. I mean, now they feel that they can come out without someone thinking, oh, this person's, off his rocker. Well, again, it's like Tim and I have said ad nauseum. Because of the stigma over the UFO subject, think of all of the stories and, frankly, all of the evidence that we'll never get to see that people took to the grave with them. It's, right. I mean, I'm sure it's just, there's probably thousands, there could be tens of thousands of stories because people are just not comfortable talking about this. Tim, what are your thoughts?
And that's still the same case right now. I mean, people are still scared to talk about it, even though we had all that media attention last year. I mean, look what's happened since the UFO report. Pretty much silence in the media. You know, everything's been diverted away from the UFO subject, and UFO channels are getting censored, and a lot of things are happening. So why? Why are they slamming the lid down? So what I'm saying to you is I still think it's difficult for people to talk about it because they're still afraid of losing their job, their position.
Sure. Oh, I mean, at this point, it's certainly coming out and starting to telling your boss about your UFO experiences or whatever is probably not going to be a promotional event for you. But at least I think we're going to that end. I think the next generation of people hopefully will have a better understanding of this. I don't think they'll have the answers, but hopefully they'll have a better understanding, and at least so that people that have experience that are free to come out and talk about them without the fear of ridicule and loss of career and all the horrible things that have happened to people over the years. Folks, we're going to be doing a Halloween special this year. One of the things we're going to be talking about is how many people in ufology have mysteriously died or disappeared or committed suicide, and you would not believe the list of these people that are out there. There's so many of them.
Right.
Yeah, and these aren't accidents. I mean, these people have been silenced.
Right.
When Tim and I leave the house, I'm gonna tell you right now, we both look behind us. We both do that. Just in case, because we are dealing with a subject that has been so deadly to other people in the past, frankly.
Right. And the UFO man, believe it or not, the UFO man that came before me, the original one that was out in the 70s, he was actually terminated with extreme prejudice. And I know when I came on the scene back in 2012, people were saying, I thought UFO man was dead. And I said, well, the original one is. I'm the second one. So I am the second coming. There you go.
Yeah. I've outright been well, not, I don't know if threaten's the right word, but I have been warned that being a part of this movement would probably negate me ever getting any kind of government security clearance again or something like that. I think I'm more happy in the private sector. I don't know if I'd ever go back to government again, but still, it sucks that option is now off the table because I came out and told my story. I came out and explained what happened to me, and then got with Tim, and we do this every week. We're not making this stuff up, folks. I mean, this is the best facts, the best data, and that we can actually provide.
Right.
You'll see a lot of other channels with dancing aliens on them and all that business. We don't do that here because that's not the kind of guys we are. We're very strict, very right to the point about it. We try to have a good time. We try to provide information to the audience in an entertaining, friendly way. But you won't catch us, in the weeds of the tabloids. We don't play there.
Right. Okay, Tommy, weren't you going to tell us about that story about a couple of F-18s that were dispatched to chase a UFO over Oregon?
That's right. I mean, folks, we have had aircraft involved with UFOs for decades. Well, the very first UFO itself the UFO account came from an aircraft, a single engine aircraft. What was his name, Tim? Am I trying to say?
Kenneth Arnold?
Yeah, exactly. That was the very first. So airplanes and UFOs have kind of been married, if you will, for ever since then, since the inception of the first UFO sighting. You can think about other great sightings like the Iranian thing in 1973. Of course, the Shah of Iran was still in power, and there was a pilot, and I just can't think of his name. He's spoken about this many times, but there was a pilot on board an American-made F-4 Phantom, which at the time was a top-of-the-line fighter, and he approached a UFO and tried to lock weapons on it, and it basically shut his aircraft down. Now, once he got out of his mind that he was going to try to shoot this thing down, apparently the systems came back up, and he was able to land safely. Mohammed something, I can't remember his last name, but he's a doctor and all that, I think, now, and everything else. I mean, this guy is as credible as he can possibly be. That's another one. But let's go ahead and talk about one a bit more recent. And let me go ahead and bear with me just a moment here, folks.
Yeah, there's been a lot of jet stories, but this one is kind of recent.
It is. Yes, it is.
Sorry, Tommy.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
It involves two F-18s, and even though we have F-22s and F-35s now, it's interesting that it occurred probably in the 90s, Tommy?
I believe this was in the late 90s. I apologize, folks. I'm looking for it right now. Here we go.
It's okay.
Okay. Here we go. I've got it right here. Okay. This is actually F-18s, and we've got some tapes of this. I don't know if we can actually play the tapes, but I'm going to go and read you the story. This took place, and the story is written on February 15th of 2018, and it reads, last November, the War Zone posted an exclusive story detailing a bizarre incident involving an unidentified aircraft that transited the skies of the Pacific Northwest in the early evening of October 25th, 2017. What started as a radar target moving at very high speed over Northern California turned into a series of eyewitness accounts made by nearby airline pilots traveling northward over Oregon. Even F-15 fighters were launched to intercept the mysterious intruder that quickly became invisible to radar. Now, through the Freedom of Information Act, we present what could be one of the most insightful instances of an official documentation surrounding such an encounter that had already been confirmed to have occurred by both the FAA and the United States Air Force. These materials include fascinating audio recordings of radio transmissions on the phone calls made as the incident was unfolding, as well as pilot interviews and conversations between FAA officials made in the aftermath of the highly peculiar incident. Folks, I'm going to go ahead and put this link out there into the chat. Again, I don't know if we can do the audio without getting busted by YouTube, but you can go ahead and listen to this yourself. There it would be. And it says, for proper context, make sure to first read our original posted link here detailing the event, how our report came to be in the first place, as well as the rare confirmations to its authenticity from both the FAA and the United States Air Force. Below is also a short explainer video that will give you a basic overview of the incident. This is a fantastic article, folks. I definitely, after the show, definitely suggest you go back and check this one out. Now, fast forward 3 months later, and now we have so much more evidence that adds incredible depth and color to our original report and the limited radio recordings that we originally had to go off of. Via the Freedom of Information Act request, we received hours of audio, all with unique elements that add to this story. What we have done is package that audio as well as the radar data provided into 4 separate videos. We will highlight some of the big takeaways from each video in our piece, but we cannot stress enough how interesting and eye-opening this audio is to listen to in full. So we highly recommend that you do so by watching each video in its entirety. And then it goes on to talk about the different videos and everything. Let's see, let's go a little further. Oakland Center Sector 31 first detected the target around 4:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Below is a chart showing where the Oakland Center's high-altitude sectors are situated around Northern California. Sector 31 spans roughly from Sacramento up towards Redding before its northern edge, which is near the border with Oregon, terminates, and Seattle Center's airspace begins. To the east of the airspace, it sits along the California-Nevada border. This makes sense as the craft was eventually tracked by airline pilots as it made its way up over Crater Lake and toward Willamette Valley. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen on this one, folks, just so you guys can just get a little bit of a look at this. Okay, got me? All right. So this is the sectors that they're talking about, essentially. This is how they have them broken up. And this is Sector 31, where everything started, okay? And there's more of that. The intruder quickly dropped off the radar, and that's when the visual sightings made by airline crews began. They continued for roughly half an hour and over hundreds of miles. The exchanges between nearby pilots and air traffic control regarding the unidentified aircraft were constant in the video, with the same description coming back time and time again. That of a white aircraft cruising at around 37,000 feet. That is too far away to tell what type or if it has markings of any kind. Sounds a lot like a Tic Tac, doesn't it?
Kind of.
At roughly 27:30 into the video, we get our first indication that the F-15s out of PDX were about to scramble, with the air traffic controller noting this while talking to another FAA controller, during which the controller also reiterates that there has still been no radar contact with the aircraft. The controller also repeatedly asks aircrews nearby to check their traffic collision avoidance system, or TCAS, for the aircraft, which all came back negative. So the radars on the planes weren't seeing it. The radars, I guess ground radars, they weren't seeing it. After they first picked it up, it's like it disappeared from radar. However, the object was still there and visible because it was reported by multiple pilots. The F-15s first appear on radar as they climb out of Portland to the south at time index 3333 as Rock Flight, a common call sign used for the alert F-15s stationed at PDX. Alaska 439 asked for an update on the unidentified aircraft, and the controller notes that they still have nothing on him, saying that it must be some kind of stealth mode or something. I mean, think about that. FAA controllers are saying that. It's also interesting that the F-15s went south when it seems as if the object would have been north of the PDX by the time they finally launched. So in other words, they were going the wrong way. The second video is just the radar data in its raw form. It starts before the synced recording begins above, so we thought we would post it in full so our readers can take a closer look if they want. Next, we move into some very interesting recordings of the FAA phone calls that occurred as all of this was taking place. We edited out dead space in the audio between the calls and bleeped the names of those who named themselves. Aside from that, the audio is unedited by us, although we cannot be certain if parts were redacted by the FAA or not. There were a few strange areas where conversations went mute, and it's not clear if this was edited or just a normal anomaly. Yeah, my money says edited.
Yeah,
they probably said, looks like a great big flying saucer, and that's what they bleeped out. Anyway, the primary person taking most of these calls is the operations manager in charge for Seattle Center at the time that the incident took place. So, I mean, this is a really long article, but I mean, you've got so much going on here. These guys have compiled every bit of this information, the recordings and all of that, and even the recordings, not just between the pilots, but between the FAA, the controllers, everybody that spoke about this, they've got video, they've got audio on. It's incredible. When the manager in charge is asked if he was asking for military assistance by another FAA controller, the tape goes blank. The same inquiry is heard moments later, and it goes silent again before another call begins. So, of course, he was requesting military assistance. They just don't want to. They just edited that out of the official recording. Okay, so much for the Freedom of Information Act, right? Strikes again. Yeah. Freedom of Give You What We Want Act is what it should be called. Anyway, although it really doesn't have much impact on the greater mystery, who asked for the F-15s to scramble and when comes up in the next video, an exchange between the same manager and an FAA official. In the final set of calls in the video, we hear controllers talking about how the Air Force wants to set up an air patrol over Battleground, Washington, which is a dozen miles directly north of PDX. We know that the F-15s headed south initially, so it isn't clear if this call came after they initially headed in that direction or before they were even airborne and the plan changed later on for some reason. Once again, Rock refers to the call sign of the alert fighters. Finally, we get our last and most interesting of the evidence videos. It contains the calls made after the incident occurred. Seattle Center's manager in charge of operations tries to figure out what happened exactly. In doing so, he talks once again with Seattle Center and the trio of airline pilots that spotted the craft visually and have some very interesting conversations with the FAA's Air Traffic Organization Security Officer and the agent's Safety and Quality Assistance Group. First, we hear about the big question as to who requested the scramble, according to the call. It has come from FAA headquarters. The manager floats the idea, in retrospect, of having the airlines keep a visual on the craft instead of allowing them to then descending into PDX. At least the F-15 show up, but the FAA official swats that down as they didn't know that what the aircraft was. If they are equipped with anything or its intentions, she reiterates that getting the military involved was a good idea, but it should have come from FAA headquarters over the DEN, whatever that is. The manager reminds her again that he doesn't know who requested military assistance, and that Oakland Center told him that call to WADS. It was a call to WADS initially. So what they've got going on there, it sounds to me like they're kind of almost arguing about who actually made the call to bring the military in. But I guess the bigger point here, folks, let me go ahead and stop sharing. The bigger point to the whole story is the fact that it happened in the first place. I mean, what you have here, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the story, is you had a radar contact basically drop in out of Canada and cruise through the northwest part of the United States. Now, initially, when they first picked it up on radar before it went off radar, they assumed that it could have been possibly drug traffickers or something like that because it did not have a transponder, and every plane's supposed to have one. Then when it went radar dark, they thought, okay, well, whatever it is now gone, until airline pilots from all over the place, all over the area, began to report what they're seeing. And again, folks, this is a great story. Those are great videos. These guys did a really great work on this. They put a lot into it. I highly suggest that you check this out because, it's just another one of those incidents that just simply cannot be denied, even though they sure tried to deny it. Tim?
Right. I agree. Not a lot more we can say about that because of all the censoring of the data. I mean, the erasing of the tapes, the erasing of the audio. It was just amazing how much they tried to cover it up. But we do have this information from the drive. Go over and check it out. Give them a like and a sub on their YouTube channel. They're phenomenal.
That's right.
Our next subject is a podcast with some images I'm going to put up in a video. It's entitled UFO Retrievals by the U.S. through Project Moondust. While this is playing, we'll be in the chat room answering your questions and talking to you directly. So here we go.
I mean, for example, one of the things I wrestled with when I was doing my documentary was, do I tell the story of alleged crash retrievals? And I agonized about it. To be honest, I was really nervous about it because even though I had the former director of science and technology development from the US Navy, no less, Nat Kobitz, on the record telling me that he was briefed into an alleged program which allegedly involved the retrieval of multiple non-human craft.
Let me ask you, in the recent bill that's come to light in the US, the NDAA bill, a few things are specified. Amongst them are biological effects, working with allies, and a suggestion of not necessarily recovered crashed technology, but discovered technology. Now, we have heard hints and stories of possible discoveries made during archaeological digs. They tend to focus on areas around Crete or in the Middle East as locations for those discoveries. Have you heard anything that would back up those sorts of claims?
I haven't heard it for Crete or Greece, but yes, I have heard that a craft was recovered from the Indian subcontinent. That's what I was told by somebody with a smirk from the intelligence community. And I was told that it was taken as part of Operation Moondust to the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And, bottom line is, I don't know if it's true or not, but I was gobsmacked to go through the CIA's library. And if you go into their online archive, and I've got the links to this in my book, you will find a document, in fact, multiple documents that refer to Operation Moondust, tracing and attempting to recover a flying saucer. That's the word they use, a craft that has been discovered in one case in Nepal and in another case in a province of Afghanistan. And just today, I was having a conversation with an Indian UFO researcher who was filling me in on what he knows about that incident. And, frankly, the only reason that CIA archive has been declassified is because when Bill Clinton was the president, John Podesta made it very, very clear that as a senior policy advisor to the president, he thought the US government should be being more transparent about what it knows about the phenomenon. And I think he was persuaded to the notion that there has been an official reluctance to release all that the US knows. And so it was under the Clinton administration that most of those CIA files were declassified in a huge swag. And what blew me away is whilst they've been reported before I looked at them, I actually read the first time I looked at the one that talked about the craft in Afghanistan, I looked at it about 10 times thinking, is this a fake? Is this like an MJ12 document that's been planted in a file or something? And it just gobsmacked me that here in the CIA's archives, there was a document that asserted a craft retrieval, or at least an attempted craft retrieval. And when I spoke to, as journalists do, my anonymous sources in different sections of the US defense and intelligence community, I was amazed. I expected it to be quite difficult to get people to talk to me about this. But once people knew that they were speaking to me confidentially, and once they knew that I'd gone to enormous efforts to protect their identity by not using electronic means to communicate with them that could readily be bugged or tracked, they opened up. And I was told, and I'm cautious in saying this because people will immediately assume that I'm saying it's true. I don't know it's true because there's always the risk of a disinformation program. There's always the risk that what this is another Richard Doty plant trying to mislead a journalist, as has happened countless times before. But I was told that, yes, there is a program. There is an active, ongoing program where the US government has recovered craft. And indeed, one of the things I worked through was the historical documents of Wilbert Smith, the Canadian researcher, and his communications with a guy called Robert Sabacha, who was on the scientific advisory committee for the Manhattan Project and then allegedly later on worked for this secret group that was essentially trying to back engineer craft that had been recovered. And he told researchers that he didn't understand why this was being kept confidential, but he acknowledged its reality. Now, there comes a time where, as a journalist, you go through different levels of proof. And okay, there's an allegation. So prima facie, there's an allegation, say that X murdered Y. Then you get to a kind of a civil level where you think, beyond a balance of probabilities, on a balance of probabilities, it's probably the case that X murdered Y. And then you get to a criminal burden where you think beyond reasonable doubt, X murdered Y. Well, I'm on the civil burden at the moment. I think it's on the balance of probabilities more likely than not that the United States government is lying through its teeth when it says that it hasn't recovered ET craft. And it's really interesting because the only president that has ever said that is Barack Obama. And they did it under enormous pressure. If you remember, there was a petition which was put to the White House, and I think the president's office, in order to get the media off their back, referred it to the scientific advisor for the president, and probably without the authorization or the supervision too closely of the president, a press release was put out by the science advisor, which basically asserted definitively that as far as the White House was aware, there is no evidence of extraterrestrial visitations to the planet Earth, and there's certainly no evidence, I think, of recoveries of alien spacecraft. So it poo-pooed the whole Roswell story as a myth, and an untrue myth at that. I'm not so sure anymore. And I think we should be asking that question. And for me as a journalist, that was a huge turning point. And the best way I can express this is to say that journalists always have 10 times as many sources for the sources that they quote publicly. And so I'm making no secret of the fact that when Nat Kobitz went on the record with me and said, yes, you can quote me, I was briefed into a UFO retrieval program. He introduced me to people. He put me on to people that he knew inside the defense, science, military infrastructure. And those people spoke to me because Nat recommended that I do. And they've trusted me with their information. And I think there's something to it. I don't know for sure. Are you asking me, is there a TR3B or whatever it is jacked up on blocks in a cave somewhere in Area 51? I don't bloody know. But I strongly suspect there is.
Now, listen, you talked about stigma, and one of the arguments people will always use in this conversation about UFOs is if these craft are so technologically superior as they would appear to be, how can they crash? So in your findings and your research, have you forged any opinion as to why they may, one, crash, or two, be left here?
Well, you're using the word crash, and I guess I did use the word crash with the Aztec incident. But I'm not persuaded that they're all crashes. Edgar Mitchell, and this is something I'm telling you for the first time, Edgar Mitchell told my source, the spaceman, who was one of his closest friends, that he understood that a fully functioning craft was found literally with the lights on and the door open, and the US military recovered it off the Mexican military under gunpoint and took it back to the United States off Mexican soil. And that was a story that Edgar Mitchell told my friend, the spaceman. Now, I don't know if it's true or not, but I don't think Edgar Mitchell had lost his marbles even by his late time in life. And he was utterly convinced that there had been multiple craft retrievals. And he told this to his friend, and indeed he told it to multiple friends. So when you have one of the most respected astronauts, one of the greatest American heroes of recent times, defying the United States government and accusing the US government of a cover-up, of a conspiracy to conceal information. But it's quite obvious to me that the United States Air Force is lying through its teeth. And one of the things that's been emphasized to me by multiple sources is craft were found archaeologically. They were found in apparent crash incidents. And more importantly, they were also found as if they'd been left on purpose for us to find.
That's right. You know, and the guy makes several just fantastic points there. We were talking in the chat room earlier about the flyover of the White House and how Truman had issued the order to shoot down. Not that we had a prayer of doing that at the time, but that just shows you how seriously he took it. When you're talking about shooting things down over the capital of the United States, I mean, that's pretty severe. What are your thoughts on that, Tim?
Also, the 1942 Battle of LA incident where they were shooting anti-aircraft weaponry towards the sky and what they thought was an unidentified object. They were trying to knock it out of the sky.
They thought it was Japanese at first, because we were in war with Japan. And then so they lit this thing up. I mean, they lit that object up so righteously with every kind of AA that they could actually pull in there, that the shells themselves were falling on people's houses and killed a couple of people.
Right.
And you know what they got for their efforts? Jack nothing. They shot nothing down.
Right.
That's one of those stories that I'll believe that was a UFO to the day I die. I just really believe that. Nothing else makes sense.
there's actually some really good photo shots of what they think they saw in the lights that were trained on the object they were shooting at. Whether that's legitimate or not, we can't verify it here on UFO Man, but we will try to do so and bring that information to you in the future.
That's right. That's right. I guess the whole point of tonight's show, folks, is that the military jets have intercepted or been asked to intercept multiple UFOs over the years. I mean, we've got the incident over what was it, Lake Superior, I believe, where
Right.
the two pilots, we did a story about those guys a year or so ago, but they were tasked to intercept a UFO, broad open daylight over the open water. I think it was Lake Superior, and they found there was a UFO on radar. Here comes the jet plane that was intercepted. Both the contacts merge until there's only one contact, and then suddenly it shoots up and is just gone out of the atmosphere. Okay,
Right.
They
And
never
the pilot-
they never found a shred of wreckage from that. Nothing. And they had two different militaries looking for that, the Canadians and the Americans, and every fishing boat on the water, and nobody found so much as a shred of a uniform or nothing. How does that
Right.
work?
None of the pilots were found ever. Nope. And not just that one. What about the time that the airliner with what was he, Japanese pilot
Karachi.
saw that huge UFO, and everybody on his plane saw it as well, and they were talking about it in the cockpit. So
NATO was alerted. They woke Ronald Reagan up. He was president. They woke Reagan up out of bed, telling him about this. Now, that's pretty severe when they wake the president. That means there's something really going on. NATO went nuts over this. There were radar tracks on these objects all over the place. And this poor Captain Tarachi, I'll tell you, he was in there with a crew of people, and all three of these people are in real time on the radio describing these objects. It wasn't just one guy, okay?
Right.
And then once they land and do their report and all that, the FAA or somebody or whoever they were working for, whatever, intimidated the other two people that were in the cockpit to basically recant their story. But Tarachi never did. He said, look, this is what happened. These guys know what happened. They're just scared. So for his effort, for his trouble, they made him ride a desk for the rest of his career, which as a pilot is kind of like, it's a major demotion. It's one of those things. It's like they hand you the mop and the bucket. You know what I mean? This is what you do now, like a major demotion. So it's sad. It's sad, and it's wrong that so many people have been completely screwed over simply because they came forward with their story. I mean, I was afraid to do it as a government employee. I was scared to death to do that. And I wouldn't do it until I got into the private sector, which gave me some more freedom, I think. So, the truth is out there.
We convinced him with all the money we're making, right, Tommy?
That's what it is. I mean, my third Ferrari this year, I tell you.
Right.
But anyway, folks, I tell you, we want to thank everybody for coming out this evening. We had a great time doing the show. We normally have a guest on, and we decided against that this week because Tim and I just wanted to kind of go back to our roots on a show and just, be he and I and back and forth and all of that. So we want to thank everybody for coming out. We certainly hope that the show was very informative. And Tim?
Yeah, I want to thank everybody in the chat room for being here and for participating. I want to thank everybody who participated online as well. And I
thank you, chatters.
Thank you for coming. And we hope to see you next week, same time, same station. Remember, we did change our time. So we will be starting at 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern. And we are also working on a big Halloween spooktacular. So stay tuned and check us out at a later date. So we'll see you next Saturday.